A mountain does not explain itself to the valley below. It simply stands, and everything around it adjusts. That is the kind of power most people spend their entire lives chasing in the wrong direction. They believe it comes from speaking louder, from getting the last word in, from making certain that every person in the room knows exactly what they have accomplished, exactly what they think, and exactly what they are capable of. But consider the most genuinely powerful people you have ever encountered, the ones who left a mark on you that you still carry. They were almost always quieter than you expected. They reacted less. They over-explained nothing. They did not perform for you. And they carried more weight than everyone around them. That is not personality. That is practice. Today on Stoic Sight, we are walking through 6 rules that will fundamentally change the way people experience you, not through what you say, but through what you choose not to say, not to do, and not to need. These 6 rules connect. Skip any one of them, and you miss how they function together as a single system. If you are ready to stop leaking your strength into conversations and rooms that do not deserve it, drop in the comments right now. Stillness is my foundation. Let's begin. Rule 1. Silence is not absence, it is weight. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus observed that we are given 2 ears and 1 mouth, a proportion that suggests something about the ratio we were meant to keep. Most people hear that and agree. Then they go right back to filling every available silence with words. Because here is the thing that observation does not spell out, and that almost no one is taught directly. Silence is not a pause. It is not the absence of communication. It is its own form of communication, and in many specific moments, the most accurate and powerful form available to a human being. Pay attention to what happens inside most people when a conversation pauses for even a few seconds. There is an internal alarm, an urgency, a scramble to produce something, anything, not because there is genuinely something worth saying, but because the silence itself creates discomfort. That discomfort is worth examining carefully. What it is actually communicating is this: I am not comfortable simply existing in a space without producing output. I need words to feel present. I need noise to feel safe. And the moment that discomfort begins steering your speech, something important has been surrendered. Think about the moments in your own experience where silence hit you before words ever arrived. A mentor who sat with your question rather than immediately filling the air with an answer. A respected colleague in a meeting where everyone else competed to speak who said nothing and somehow controlled the energy of the entire room because of it. Silence carries gravity. And gravity, without any effort, is a form of power. Here is the direct consequence for you. When you speak constantly, every reaction, every half-formed opinion, every thought as it surfaces, your words lose their signal. People stop processing them because they know more are coming. You become background noise, easy to half listen to, easy to tune out. But when you speak less, when you allow silence to exist without flinching from it, something changes in how people receive you. They hold what you said, instead of already waiting for the next thing. They begin to associate your words with weight, because experience has taught them that you do not spend them carelessly. That quiet reputation, built not through announcement, not through performance, but through the consistent discipline of restraint, is one of the most durable things a person can construct over a lifetime. Your silence is not absence. It is a statement no argument can answer. There is also something that happens inside you when you develop this practice. When you stop filling every pause, you begin to hear what you were missing. You pick up the actual texture of conversations, what is being skirted around, what is only half said, what someone's posture and pace are communicating, while their words say something else entirely. That kind of perception takes stillness to cultivate, and once developed, it sharpens everything downstream. Your judgment, your timing, your precision. Rule 1 is not about going silent to seem mysterious or distant. It is about understanding that every word you intentionally withhold adds mass to the ones you eventually use. Less spoken, more weight carried. Rule 2. What you choose not to expose protects everything still growing. There is an old discipline among craftsmen in certain traditions. They do not show the work until it is finished. Not from fear, not from secrecy for its own sake, but because they understand something precise about the relationship between exposure and integrity. Every unfinished thing carries a vulnerability, a draft half-written, a plan that exists right now only as conviction and not yet as evidence. A goal that is real inside you but that has not yet produced anything the external world can see or confirm. When you expose something in that state before it has developed roots, before it can hold its own weight under pressure, you introduce a risk that most people dramatically underestimate. Other people's doubt. Now, doubt from people you trust is not always destructive. In the right form and the right relationship, it is friction that sharpens something good into something better. But the specific kind of doubt that quietly damages you is the early variety, the kind that lands on a vision before it has grown enough to push back against scrutiny. Because doubt does not simply stay where you placed it, it migrates. It finds the corners inside you that are already uncertain, the places where your own confidence is still forming, and it settles there. And on the days when momentum drops, which it always does, that settled doubt begins speaking in your own internal voice. You start questioning things you were completely clear about before you told anyone. This is precisely why so many people announce a bold goal in the first week of a new year and have quietly abandoned it before the second month. It is not a character failure. It is that the vision was shared before it was strong enough to survive contact with external skepticism. The Stoics understood this. Their privacy was not driven by paranoia. It was strategic wisdom, a clear-eyed recognition that different stages of any creation require different levels of protection. You do not manage what has access to what because you are afraid. You do it because you are paying attention. One question worth running before you share anything still forming. Am I sharing this because it serves the thing I am building or only to relieve the discomfort of holding it alone? Most of the time, the honest answer is the second one. And most of the time, the wiser move is to hold it a little longer. What you guard with patience, you give room to become something real. This applies far beyond professional ambitions. Personal struggles not yet resolved, values still clarifying, relationships still fragile. Not everything needs a public audience to be valid. Not every unfinished thing benefits from scrutiny it is not yet equipped to withstand. Choosing carefully what you reveal and what you protect is not deception, it is discernment. It is the kind of self-respect that most people only recognize in others long after they have already practiced it. The practical version: let results speak before the process does. Share the finished thing, protect the forming thing, and build the discipline to tell the difference between them reliably. Rule 3. The space before your response is where your power lives. Viktor Frankl, a man who survived the Nazi concentration camps and emerged with his philosophy of meaning entirely intact, wrote something that has outlasted nearly everything produced in the same era. Between what happens to us and how we respond, there is a space. In that space lives the freedom to choose, and in that choice lies every form of growth a human being can access. He wrote that not from comfort, not from safety, not from a position of control. He wrote it while watching everything most people define as identity, family, home, future, the ordinary thread of a life stripped away one by one. And what he discovered at the extreme edge of human experience is that the one thing that could not be taken was the space between stimulus and response. Now consider how that same space gets used in ordinary daily life. Someone online says something dismissive, and within 30 seconds you are already typing. Someone cuts you off in traffic and your mood is altered for the next hour. A colleague says something careless and you are mentally rehearsing responses for the rest of the afternoon. A plan collapses, and before you have had time to actually process what happened, you are already inside a spiral. In every one of those cases, you handed that space away before you noticed you had it. And every time you hand the space away, you hand your composure along with it. Here is the honest truth about reactive behavior. When you respond immediately to something that has destabilized you, you are not being genuine. You are being steered. The trigger, the person, the situation, the offhand comment, the setback has taken the wheel of your response. You are no longer the author of how you show up in that moment. Something outside of you is writing that page for you. And beyond any individual incident, here is what accumulates over time. Every time you lose your composure visibly, you broadcast information to everyone observing. You show them exactly which pressure points produce a reaction. And certain people, not everyone, but some, will quietly file that knowledge. They will know, without being told directly, how to pull you off balance whenever they need to. Composed people are harder to manipulate not because they feel nothing, but because they carry no visible lever. The Stoics were not numb. They felt frustration, anger, the particular sting of injustice acutely. They were not arguing for the removal of emotion. They were arguing for the gap, one deliberate beat between the feeling and the action. In that one beat, a single question: does this deserve my energy right now? Most situations do not. Learning to recognize that quickly and reliably is one of the most practical skills available to anyone serious about how they operate. A simple method for beginning to build it. Before responding to anything that has unsettled you, deliberately wait longer than instinct wants. If it is a message, give it an hour. If it is a live conversation, take one slow, intentional breath before speaking. If it is a larger situation, give yourself until morning before deciding your approach. You will discover that the majority of things that seem to demand an immediate response required nothing at all. By the time you returned, they had resolved, diminished, or become irrelevant entirely. And the situations that genuinely did require a response, you handled them more precisely at lower cost. There is also a longer-term benefit here that almost no one considers directly. When you stop reacting to everything, your nervous system recalibrates. You stop living in a persistent, low-level state of alertness and defensiveness. You stop carrying the accumulated weight of 100 unresolved reactions from conversations that should have ended cleanly. Your thinking becomes quieter. Your decisions become cleaner, because you are no longer spending a substantial portion of your mental energy managing the downstream consequences of responses you should never have given. That is not a minor adjustment. That is the quality of your interior life, improving not because anything outside you changed, but because your relationship to the things outside you changed. Rule 4. Speak when it has earned its place, not a moment before. Marcus Aurelius, in his private journal, words he wrote for himself and no one else, set out a rule of striking simplicity. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. That is the whole principle, direct, unambiguous. Every sentence you produce either adds to or subtracts from the credibility you hold in the minds of the people around you. Think of it as a kind of account. When you say something considered, true, genuinely useful, something the person receiving it actually needed, you make a deposit. Their trust in your words increases. They give more weight to what you say next time. But when you speak to fill space, when you offer opinions on subjects you have not actually examined, when you comment on situations that have nothing to do with you, when you argue about positions that will have no significance in 2 weeks, you make a withdrawal. And accounts can go into deficit, not dramatically, not in a single catastrophic conversation. It happens gradually, across dozens of interactions. People begin giving your words only partial attention. They start filtering what you say before deciding whether it is worth processing fully. They do not do this consciously. No one decides to stop listening to someone. It simply becomes the pattern. Not because of any one thing you said, because of the accumulated weight of what your words have been worth over time. There is a specific habit underneath most credibility erosion, and it is this: speaking not to genuinely communicate a thought, but to manage how someone perceives you in real time, talking to seem knowledgeable, to seem certain, to perform the impression of someone who has everything figured out. People feel the difference between these two things. They cannot always name the distinction, but they register it. The person speaking from genuine understanding produces trust. The person performing understanding produces, over time, a vague discomfort, a sense that something is slightly off, without a clear source. Quietly powerful people run one filter before they speak. Does saying this serve something real right now? Not, is this true? True things can still be unnecessary. Not, is this interesting? Interesting things can still be distracting. Just, does saying this serve something real right now? If yes, they speak, clearly, without rushing. If no, and honestly examined, that is the answer more often than most people expect, they hold it. Let the moment pass. Redirect the energy towards something that actually matters. This applies specifically to arguments. Not every wrong position needs your correction. Not every person holding a view you disagree with is waiting to be recalibrated. Some conversations are not conversations at all. They are performances. And the most powerful thing you can do with a performance is simply decline to participate. Choose your words with the same deliberateness you would bring to any serious expenditure. Every word counts, and the ones you never spent are often the ones that protected you most. Rule 5. Your composure is the most visible form of power you carry. Marcus Aurelius, again privately, not for an audience. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This came from a man governing an empire under almost unrelenting pressure. Wars on multiple frontiers simultaneously. Political betrayal from inside his own administration. A plague that swept through the population and killed millions. Personal losses that would have dismantled most people entirely. And in his private writing, the pages never intended to be read, he returned again and again to one central recognition. The event does not hold the authority. My response to the event holds the authority, and that response is mine alone to determine. Most people carry a wrong picture of what genuine power looks like in practice. They think it is dominance, volume. The person who takes up the most space speaks with the greatest force and refuses under any circumstance to back down. In certain limited environments, that kind of presence carries temporary weight. But real power, the lasting kind, the kind people still reference years after a room has emptied, almost always looks quiet. It looks like a person who is completely settled at the center of themselves while everything around them is accelerating. When you remain composed in a moment that would destabilize most people, that composure is visible. It registers before a single word is spoken. And what it communicates travels deeper than logic, deeper than argument, deeper than anything words could produce. It says, without saying it, I have been through difficult things before. I am not new to pressure. Whatever is happening here does not have the authority to move me from where I stand. That message does not arrive through conscious reasoning. It arrives through something older and faster than thought. And it shifts the energy of whatever is happening, not because composure is passive, but because composure is the visible proof that this situation does not own you. Here is the practical dimension. Your body, your pace, your expression, the way you move these, broadcast your internal condition at every moment, whether or not you are speaking, how quickly or slowly you move. Whether your posture suggests someone bracing for impact or someone who has already absorbed it, the pace at which you speak, the pace of someone with something worth saying, or the pace of someone filling silence nervously. People read all of that constantly, below conscious awareness, and the answers they arrive at is, this person stable? Can I rely on what they are about to tell me? Come primarily from those signals, not from your words. Composure is not a trait you either possess or lack. It is a skill, It is built through practice, specifically through choosing it in small moments long before the significant ones arrive. The moment you choose not to snap back at something that irritated you, the moment you choose to breathe before answering a loaded question, the moment you let a difficult conversation end without reaching for the final word, each of those choices deposits something. Accumulated over months and years, what they deposit is a person who is genuinely difficult to rattle, not unfeeling stable, built in a way that cannot be faked on short notice. And here is the value of that compounding. When something genuinely serious arrives, the kind of event that demands everything you have, you are still standing. You have not burned your composure on situations that did not warrant it. You preserved it. And in the moments where it matters completely, it is fully available. That is what consistent composure builds. Not just a reputation that others observe, a resource you can actually draw from. Drop in the comments, "My calm is my foundation." Rule 6. When you stop needing the room to validate you, you start leading it. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." This is the final rule, and it occupies that position not because it is least important, but because it is the condition under which the other 5 rules genuinely take root. Without this one, everything we have covered today remains technique, borrowed from the outside, applied consciously, useful in individual moments perhaps, but not owned from within. With this one, technique becomes character. Here is the truth sitting at the center of everything we have examined today. Almost every word you should not have said, every over-explanation, every defensive reaction, every argument that ran twice as long as necessary, every opinion offered before it was requested, every private thing shared before it had grown strong enough to withstand the sharing, almost all of it traces back to a single source: the need for someone else to approve. We over-explain because we cannot bear the thought of someone misunderstanding our choices without being corrected. We react defensively because we need the other person to acknowledge explicitly that they were wrong to push us. We keep speaking long past the point where anything is being added because we need to feel that someone was genuinely moved by what we said. We share things that were not yet ready because the discomfort of holding them alone feels worse than the risk of exposing them too early. All of it, every leak, every expenditure of energy in the wrong direction, is approval seeking. And approval seeking is the mechanism operating behind every power loss we have discussed today. Here is the distinction that matters. Wanting to be understood is not a flaw. Wanting genuine connection, wanting to feel recognized by people who matter to you, these are deeply human needs. There is nothing weak in them. The problem is specifically when that need starts making decisions before your judgment can catch up, when it causes you to speak in the heat of a moment in ways you would not choose with 5 more minutes of thought, when it causes you to make yourself smaller to fit more comfortably into someone else's picture of who you should be, when it directs enormous quantities of energy toward managing how you are perceived, energy that cannot, while it is doing that job, go anywhere else. The shift that changes everything is interior, not a technique, not a posture you adopt. A genuinely different relationship with your own sense of worth. When you are genuinely grounded in who you are, not perfectly, not without doubt, but sincerely rooted in what you value and what you stand for, something in your entire way of moving through the world changes. You stop needing every conversation to close with the other person in agreement with you. You stop needing every decision ratified by the people around you. You stop needing every room to visibly recognize you when you enter it. And something almost paradoxical follows. When you stop pursuing approval, when you become the person who clearly does not require it, people begin offering it, not because you performed well, not because you managed their perception of you successfully, because there is something about a person who is genuinely, quietly at home in themselves that draws people toward it before they understand why. That settled quality is compelling in a way that no performance can replicate. It cannot be faked because it is the product of genuine interior work, not surface adjustment. That is not a strategy. It is simply what becomes visible when you stop pretending. And it changes how you speak entirely. When you are not working to manage someone's perception of you in real time, your words become more direct, more honest, more efficient. You say what you mean without layering it in qualification and hedging designed to make it more palatable for whoever might disagree. You hold positions without needing them validated. You allow people to disagree without that disagreement destabilizing your sense of who you are. And the people who genuinely belong in your life respond to that directness with more trust than they would ever have given to the carefully managed version of you. The person who has released the need for approval is also harder to manipulate because there is no approval lever available to anyone who wants to pull you off course. They are harder to destabilize because their foundation is not built on whether this particular conversation goes well. They are harder to dismiss precisely because they are not trying to impress anyone, which creates, paradoxically, a genuine impression. That is the version of yourself these 6 rules, practiced consistently over time, are building toward. Not colder, not more closed, more real, more fully present in every room, not because you are performing presence, but because you have stopped spending your energy on performance and put all of it back into simply being there. 6 rules, 6 different angles on one truth. Speak less and become more. Rule 1. Silence is weight. Every word you hold back with intention adds mass to the ones you eventually release. The people around you begin to listen differently when experience teaches them that you do not speak without purpose. That shift in how they receive you is one of the most powerful effects you can generate without opening your mouth. Rule 2. Protect what is still becoming. Your unfinished work, your private ambitions, your convictions still forming, none of them require a public audience to be valid. What you shield with patience often develops into something stronger precisely because it was not exposed before it was ready. Give your vision time in private before you give it to the world. Rule 3. The space before your response belongs to you. Most situations that feel like they require an immediate reaction do not. The ones that genuinely matter deserve a response. You chose one you authored deliberately, not one that was extracted from you by circumstance or irritation. Rule 4. Speak when it earns its place. Every unnecessary word reduces the value of everything that follows it. Build the kind of quiet reputation where, when you speak, people lean in because they have learned from repeated experience that it means something. Rule 5. Your composure is the most visible power you carry, not your arguments, not your knowledge, not your credentials or your history. The simple visible fact of a person who remains settled at the center while everything around them moves fast, that communicates in a register language cannot reach. Rule 6. When you stop needing rooms to validate you, you stop hemorrhaging energy into the endless labor of impression management. What grows in the space reclaimed from that labor is something real, something that holds regardless of who is watching. Here is the single thing I want you to carry from today. Silent power is not a personality type. It is not something you either were born with or were not. It is a daily practice, and it starts in small moments. One sentence chosen not to be said. One reaction chosen not to be given. One decision made without walking it past the committee of people who never asked for a vote. Small, quiet, consistent. That is how it actually builds. Not in a single dramatic turning point, in hundreds of daily choices that most people around you will never notice, but that compound across time into something undeniable. You have everything required to begin right now, not when things settle down, not after you resolve a few more things. Right now. In the very next conversation you enter after this video ends. If this gave you something real, take 3 seconds, and like this video, it is the single most direct way you can help Stoic Sight reach the people who need this most. Share it with one person in your life who is spending too much energy in the wrong direction. Subscribe so you are here for what comes next. And drop a comment below. Tell me which of these 6 rules landed hardest for you. Not just the number, the specific reason. I read them. Stay grounded, stay deliberate, stay building. Before you close this, seal what you just absorbed with one last line in the comments. I speak less, I become more.